There we go. Hopefully everyone at home can see the slides that we've got going on there. And we'll make a start. So today we're going to spend the first little bit of time introducing ourselves and getting to know you all a little bit more. And then we are going to be spending around the first sort of half an hour after that with a little bit of input from us, considering why you should publish in our journal, in the Review of Education journal, and what other journals there are that exist that we could recommend as well. How do you know which type of review you should be choosing? What can evidence syntheses tell us and why they're so important? What digital evidence synthesis tools are reliable to use, and what reporting guidance exists? We're then going to move on into a more hands-on activity using a quality appraisal tool. And we'll also have an opportunity for you to ask questions of your own reviews, try and get some feedback. If there's, if you've got some burning questions in mind, I imagine you have probably come here with something you desperately want to ask. By all means, you can do so. We'll have a little bit of time later today for a Q&A / panel discussion. We'll see how the day plays out. We want to be a little bit fluid, especially as we have only 2 of us are here in person today, but the rest of our team is online. And Amy, one of our other editors, will be joining us a little bit later this afternoon. The first thing I want to say to everyone, either in the room or online, is that we have a QR code here. If you've got a mobile phone, please feel free to scan the QR code. That is for a Mentimeter poll where we're going to ask you some questions. And also, we've already got some materials that are available online on Google Drive, and the QR code for that is down the bottom right-hand side. So, to kick us off.
Yes, so I'm also one of the editors for Review of Education. We're going up on our 3rd year now, editing together this team. My name is Nina Bergdahl. I'm from Sweden, Stockholm University and Halmstad University. I'm a docent in Information Society and an associate professor in learning in a digital society.
As I said, my name is Mel Bond. I am a research fellow here at the EPPI Centre at University College London as part of the Institute of Education. And I'm also a research fellow at the National Institute of Teaching. Next, we have our wonderful Sinuang.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sin Wang Chong. I'm one of the editors of Review of Education. I'm a director at the University of St. Andrews. I look after the Center for International Language and Teacher Education Research. I'm also a visiting professor of education at King's College London, even though I'm not physically in London at the moment. But nice to see everybody.
And Amy will be able to introduce herself a little bit later. So we'll skip on to Terry.
Hi, everyone. Or actually, it is good morning from me. I'm in the States, so it's 7 a.m. for me from here. So good morning, everyone. My name is Terry. I am one of the associate editors for Review of Education, and I work here in the States as a postdoctoral fellow for Southern Methodist University.
I'm online from Australia, so it's good evening here, and I might just be starting to fall asleep by the end of this. So you'll have to keep us really gripped, Melissa, because it will be midnight by the time we get to the end. I'm an associate professor at Swinburne University in Melbourne, and I'm currently engaged with curriculum and assessment transformation at the university.
And unfortunately, Lorraine couldn't be with us. Dr. Lorraine Marshalsea is also one of our associate editors. She unfortunately couldn't be with us today. Okay, so the very first thing that we would like to know, because we've got a lot of people joining us from online, but we also have people here in the room from different organisations. There is the code. So if you don't have a mobile phone, you can go to menti.com and put that code in 65778062, and you'll be able to play along. When we first saw the responses come in from the registrations, it was amazing just how many different countries. Within the first 2 days, I think there was something like 65 different countries that were with people who had registered. So absolutely just shows how necessary this kind of workshop is, how people from all around the world are looking for further information and more detailed guidance about how to conduct evidence synthesis. I see that, wow, so far the bulk of participants are from England, Australia, Germany, Vietnam, Ireland, Guyana, Finland. Wonderful. Chile, fantastic. Italia. I hope you're enjoying the Giro d'Italia. For anyone who knows me, they know I'm an absolute cycling nut. So buongiorno to Italia. Then the next question we've got for you is, where are you at in your academic journey? A lot of people currently undertaking their PhD. Perhaps people in the room, who here is currently doing a PhD? Who's here? Yes, two. Anyone doing a master's? Wow. So you can see here there's a really broad spread of different career stages here. What are you hoping to get out of today? There we go. Okay, so this is what people are saying. Holy majoli. Okay, I must have done it as word cloud instead of the short answer format. So now we know. I love though that knowledge is coming up, and I love the little emojis that people have put there. I see a lot of better understanding, analytical strategies, quality check. Ooh, reassurance around rigor. Now that makes me happy. I really like that. Structure, step-by-step guide, understanding the process, practical strategies. Ooh, discussion on language education. Pitfalls to avoid, absolutely, and ethical use of AI for reviews. Okay, so there's a lot going on there, but fantastic that knowledge has come through so strongly. All right, so I'm going to hand over now to Sin Wang, who's going to talk about why to consider publishing in the review of education.
Thanks, Mel. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why you should consider publishing with us, apart from the fact that we are a bunch of very adorable people and very supportive editors. There are many, many journals out there that publish educational research, but also evidence syntheses in education. So why consider review of education? So I'm going to give you hopefully a few good reasons for you to consider. So review of education is part of the BERA journal portfolio. So we're one of the 4, I believe, journals. So we specialize in publishing long-form journal articles, including major primary studies and substantial reviews. If you can't really read the words in the paragraphs there, I think the number 20,000 words will jump out, and that's really our signature in terms of publishing research from 8,000 words all the way up to 20,000 words. That gives authors the space and the scope to really think creatively about how you would make use of the generous word limit. So personally, I think I'm very proud of the journal because we publish a wide range of publication types. There are publication types that you can find in other journals, but there are also types that are quite unique to Review of Education. So we publish special issues. Currently, we have 3 to 4 ongoing special issues that are co-edited by researchers and practitioners. So that's another kind of thing that we try to emphasize with the journal, is this kind of research practice integration. So we want the education research that's published in our journal to be as relevant to teachers, to educational practitioners, policymakers as much as possible. So we have a range of special issues. We publish research reports, and due to our word limit, as you remember, up to 20,000 words, I've seen a lot of innovative examples of how authors make use of the 20,000 word count. For example, there are publications that present multi-part studies. So it could be 2, 3 related studies, and then they can publish it as an article and kind of synthesize the insights from those studies. So that's one way you can think about research report. I've also seen more and more qualitative and longitudinal studies in our journal. Very often when you publish or submit a qualitative study to a journal with a word limit of 7,000 or 8,000 words, it's really, really hard to unpack the findings in full, and also to explain the methodology, the coding process, and the rigor and all that. So it gives you that space to really articulate your research process, especially if you're thinking about one that is longitudinal. And obviously, we publish large-scale experiments and surveys. These are international or national surveys that people also publish with us. So this is something that I want to also take this opportunity to kind of clarify. When on our website, we do say that the journal publishes major and substantial studies and syntheses. And what we don't mean by major and substantial is quantitative. So I just want to make that very clear. I think it's a kind of revised on the website, but I want to take this opportunity to emphasize that because qualitative studies, if done well, it can generate, rich and important contextualized insight. So we're not a pro-quant or pro-qual journal. We're a journal that looks at the kind of substantial contribution, potential contribution of studies. So that, I think it's an important point to make clear. Another reason you may want to publish with us is that we do have a dedicated review and synthesis section. And in addition to other journals sections, we also have our own kind of methodological guidelines, as Mel briefly introduced, Quest. And this is something that we are going to really dive into to understand the tool and how we can use the tool for self-assessment and other purposes as well. We also have an invited commentary section, and this is a section that I look after, and I think it's an important section for the journal because this is a space where we allow diverse and marginalized perspectives to be heard and to be included in the international academic discourse. And by marginalized, I often think of voices from practitioners and also scholars who are based in the Global South, for example. So I was being very deliberate when it comes to inviting colleagues to contribute. I want different voices and perspectives to be heard. And the invited commentary is also a space where readers can respond to publications. They may have read a publication and they would like to share their thoughts or rebuttals, and that's also the space for our readers to do that. Another reason you may want to consider publishing with us, since most of you are doing your PhD, and quite a number of you early career researchers, we are, and we try to be, an ECR-friendly journal. So we provide support to early career researchers and doctoral students in different forms. And as you can see, two examples on the slide there, we have editorial board members who are early career researchers, where they have the opportunity to co-review manuscripts with a more experienced colleague on our editorial board or with an associate editor. And on the right-hand side, you can see actually an output of a recently concluded mentoring scheme for early career researchers. And I'm really proud of this mentoring scheme because this is very different from what other journals do. So when you have a mentoring scheme, normally you get the opportunity to co-review a paper with an experienced colleague, and you kind of get into the nitty-gritty of feedback and kind of the reviewing process. But our mentoring scheme is quite different. We call it behind the scenes mentoring scheme. So the participants actually had the opportunity to shadow one of the editors-in-chief, and they get to see from the beginning, from submission coming in to editors looking at submissions, vetting them, desk screening them, and then to inviting peer reviewers or desk rejecting the manuscript, to kind of waiting for reviewers' comments, reading the comments and making editorial decisions. They can experience that from the beginning all the way until the very end. Of course, they're not the one making a decision, but we kind of open that door so that colleagues can kind of see what the process is like on the other side. So if you're ECR considering submitting to an educational journal, you appreciate a bit more support and encouragement, we're definitely one of the journals to look for. And I know that depending on where you are and where you work, journal ranking matters. Of course, it's not the only kind of indicator of impact, but it is one of the indicators. Review of Education has been a Q1 journal for quite some time, and we have a growing reputation. So you can see on the left-hand side for our site score performance is very, very encouraging, jumping from 3.3 in 2023 to 5.5 in 2024. On the right-hand side, you can see the impact factor. So again, very encouraging to see an increase from 2.7 to 3.4 in just a year. So this is really encouraging because of all the work that the board members and the editors and the peer reviewers and authors do. And if you're looking at the whole BERA journal portfolio, I'm actually very surprised and positively surprised that our journal actually ranks second, just after BJET, the British Journal of Educational Technology. So I think we're in a very kind of good position, and that people kind of are becoming more interested in publishing with us, especially we've received a lot more evidence synthesis submissions in the past years. And I think we're really building our reputation of having synthesis as our signature publication type. So I hope these are all good reasons for you to consider publishing with us. And obviously at the end of the workshop, if you have more questions about the submission process, the peer review process, we'll be very happy to answer your questions. I will hand it over to Mel for the next part.
So for the next part, how do you know which type of review to choose? So assuming that there were only a handful of review types, that would be easy. In 2009, Grant and Booth suggested that there are about 40 different categories. 10 years later, Sutton proposed 48 different categories. And in an ongoing project spanning multiple years, Pollock et al. From Lancaster University noted that the way we talk about reviews span over 1,000 different terminologies, that how we talk about it, what we mean, so on. So if we move back to Sutton, because Pollock and colleagues, 1,000 ones, it's a little bit hard to grasp during one slide or so, but the 48 categories that Sutton identified was presented as a taxonomy. And he said that there are about 7 families of review types. You have the traditional review family with critical review, integrative review, narrative review and summary, state of the art. And then we have the systematic review summary with meta-analysis and the systematic literature reviews. And we have the review of review family, where you look at the reviews and you do reviews on top of that. And the rapid review family with the different kind of rapid evidence assessment. Then there's the qualitative approach and the mixed methods approach. And after Campbell had presented his taxonomy, after Sutton had presented his taxonomy, Campbell elaborated on that and suggested that we should have a big picture review. So the field is still moving. For example, we have a newer type of review coming, bibliometric reviews, and we're not really sure how to place those into this kind of taxonomy. So it's not like a fixed consensus, stabilized, where these are the ones that are on offer. So the field is continuously moving. And bibliometric reviews, they are mostly about analyzing patterns, citation, networks, trends of institutions, authors, countries, and so on, rather than synthesizing the study findings. So if you submit a bibliometric review to us, we'd like to see an in-depth analysis in conjunction with that. So it's not just data collected from different data sets or services online that you bring together and call research. So that is important because we see sometimes ready-made images from those viewers and so on. And just getting online images is not research. So that's just a distinction that is important to make here. So which review type should you choose then? Well, let's look into a few of them. So we have the scoping review, which is, according to Grant and Booth, a preliminary assessment of potential size and scope of available research literature, which aims to identify nature and extent of research evidence. So that is the definition they offer. And even though they don't say that they don't require like a quality assessment, there needs to be a table with key findings. And most often, the type of research questions that are raised are overarching. What is the nature and scope of X subject or topic that we're exploring? And this is a few examples from our study we did a couple of years ago. So Mel and I have been working together for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very interesting study we presented at the Learning Analytics Conference that looked at learning analytics in K-12 and how the data points were gathered to explore engagement, student engagement in learning. And this is then was an emerging field why this type of scoping review was a good choice.
And to build on that, we often find that the ones that are looking at more theoretical concepts, so for example, this one was looking at how engagement theory was informing the analysis. Scoping reviews are particularly good for that kind of purpose. Either you are firming up a particular theory or you're wanting to look at how theories have developed over time. A scoping review is probably the one that I would suggest the most.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we will present 2 real-world examples, because a good practice when you conduct literature reviews is to include an overview of your coding, and that can, for example, be in an appendix. So the first type that you see here is a list of studies included in the corpus on the top. And then you normally include such things as author, year, institution, subject, grade, because we were doing educational research, school type, duration, approach, participants, and because we were also looking at EdTech, we wanted to mark what kind of educational technology that was included. And for our particular, we both defended our doctoral theses in some years back on student engagement. So this is our shared expert area, and we looked at those abbreviations. There are behavioral engagement, affective engagement, cognitive engagement, and then we had the you see the disengagement there, behavioral, affective, and cognitive disengagement. So those were those can be a different kind of approach when you want to see what kind of, how is the theories moving in the field, what are they actually approaching and looking into. The second example can be used for 2 different reasons. First, as just another example of how an appendix can look, and you can see that this is quite different from the formal one, but this is an appendix that comes with a meta review. So if you start by doing a scoping review and then you note that there are more research here than I thought. There has actually been 20 scoping reviews in this topic that I thought no one has explored earlier. There is not much room to publish yet another scoping review. Instead, you might want to do a review of reviews. So in this case, you would do a quality assessment that you can see here with using a quality appraisal tool that we will talk more about later. But here you can see how the quality ranges between the different reviews, but also what are the key findings, what are the research gaps. So really it's up to you what labels to choose when you want to convey what to include in your coding matrix and overview in the appendix. But it's really useful both to go into systematic or different kinds of reviews and read their appendices to get inspiration, and also think about what are my research questions? What is it that I want to convey? What evidence is there? There is also the mapping review if a field is kind of new. And returning to Grant and Booth, it's about to map out and categorize existing literature from which to commission further reviews and or primary research by identifying gaps in research literature. And they propose that no quality assessment here is needed because it's an exploration, and the types of research questions here can be, for example, how do the studies in the sample ground student engagement and align with theory? Which indicators of cognitive, behavioral, and affective engagement were identified in studies where educational technology was used? Which indicators of student disengagement? So those can be kind of samples to map out where the existing literature stands. Now we said that you need, as a good practice, to show the evidence, like how did I identify the data, what categories was explored. And that is a static table. Both appendices I showed you, but not all tables are static. Of course, this can be used as a static table if you take a screenshot, but when we look at evidence and gaps maps, EGMs, some of them are actually live resources. For example, those offered by 3IE and Campbell Cole. Because they are interactive and online, then if you share a link, your readers might be able to filter by population or category that they are interested in to explore how different data correlates with each other, or how they connect and how that comes together in your data sets, particularly if you have many different categories that are coded. So EGMs are systematic evidence synthesis, a product which displays the available evidence relevant to a particular research question that you raised. You can think about it as a visual matrix that has two dimensions. The primary is the rows and columns, and the second one is the filtering options that enable this exploration. This is useful to identify gaps because we can see here that some are more larger circles, and in other ones, there is nothing or very little of the evidence. So it's good in that way, but it doesn't show what the evidence says. So it's only as complementary to the interpretation that you have to ground in your data in theory and analysis. And then we have the systematic review. And again, to be consistent and turning back to Grant and Booth, this seeks to systematically search for, appraise, and synthesize research evidence, often adhering to guidelines on the conduct of a review. So it looks to synthesize the impact of something, and here we have the quality assessment requirement. We will talk more about this. Questions that can be raised in relation to this can have these characteristics. For example, 1, what are the characteristics of countries, educational settings, participants, subject, length of studies, and are methods used in research on flipped learning and student engagement in K-12? How is research on flipped learning in K-12 theoretically grounded? And which indicators of engagement and disengagement are affected as a result of using flipped learning approaches in K-12, for example?
Yeah, so the difference with this is that it was really looking at how engagement and disengagement affected the learning, affected the use of the approach, or how did the approach of flipped learning affect student engagement and disengagement? And that's where a systematic review approach is different. If we weren't looking at that effect of X on Y, it wouldn't be a systematic review we'd be wanting to do, because we're not wanting to synthesize that effect.
And when we do the quality appraisal, that is important because it also decides how much weight a particular article has in the interpretation of the findings. So you don't have a low quality article presenting your main or supporting your main arguments. Okay, so there is also a resource, right review.
Yeah, so this is it's more based for probably for more health people. However, it is still useful. It's an online tool. The slides are already in the Google Drive, so you're welcome to download them. You'll be able to access the link there, or you can just Google write review. And it takes you through a few questions about the nature of the questions that you're wanting to answer, and then it will give you some guidance on what it thinks, which kind of review it thinks you should be using. Yeah.
Important with all these tools is the human in the loop.
Absolutely.
Think for yourself, and we will also bring up some points to consider when you're making the decision. So what can evidence synthesis tell us, and why are they so important? And there's material here to access. It's the same QR code that was shared previously, if you didn't get it then. So Gog and colleagues define this as a review of research literature using systematic and explicit accountable methods. To me here, accountable is the key word. Someone else should be able to follow your steps and arrive at the same body of evidence. It should be transparent and explicit. That means that you document every decision, research strategy, inclusion criteria, how screening was done, how quality appraisal was done. Nothing is hidden. It should be replicable and updatable. This means that someone can replicate or update it a few years later when new studies have come out. When it comes to the identity gaps, identifying gaps, contradictions, or inconsistencies. So then it's not just about confirming what we think we already know, which is a very common entry point when we start on our doctoral journey, that we think that we can perhaps confirm something that we already suspect is true. But here we're actually also learning to explore what is surfacing that are evidence of conflicts, or where certain aspects that we are looking for simply doesn't exist yet. So what is missing here? And the last point is really the so what question. So why is it? Why is this important? Because of the rigor that systematic literature reviews carry, they are what policymakers, practitioners, and researchers look to in order to make their decisions and rely on when navigating ahead. And then I will show you this image from Collins, and he suggests that you can have literature review as a shared approach in the bottom, and then from that, he says, then there's quick and rapid reviews, full systematic and multi-arm reviews, and review reviews, and suggest that it's about what time and cost you have and what critical appraisal and systemacy and breadth of search. And those are roughly, we can agree roughly with those, but I will say also that these points made by Go and colleagues are not evenly weighed across the different review types. One thing to think about it loosely is exploration versus confirmation, where the dark blue ones are more exploring, maybe an emergent area, and the light are trying to confirm together to be this rigor type of replicable machinery that you're rolling out. And in addition to the time and budget suggested by Collins, I will say that it is about the maturity of the evidence base that is determining what kind of review that you can really look to approach. So sometimes we do get rapid reviews, mapping reviews or so on a very established field, and that will not be published because this is something that you approach perhaps when you even include white papers or different, because there is so little written. We're trying to grasp what there is, and of course it's very interesting and important to gather the emergent data too, but these are different kind of approaches. There is truth in Collins when it comes to demand of rigor, then it increases alongside this image that you can see. So will this impact you as a researcher? Most definitely. You will develop your search and retrieval skills. You will be exposed to many different kinds of research and writing styles. You will get a broad understanding of the topic and also identify research gaps. But there are also some challenges because you need to read up on your method, decide what am I doing, what kind of review am I doing, and what method does that need me to develop in order to show the systemacy and the scientific base that you're building your review on. You might also, and most currently these days, get a little bit acquainted with software. And then we're not talking about ChatGPT writing your review, but using the actual tools that are out there for digital tools for literature review, such as EPPI-Reviewer, Covidence, and others. Will you mention some of them? Yes. Because I think people might be interested in what are the reliable tools that I can use that can take some leverage off this heavy workload that it is. There is the scope and retrieval, of course. Some manuscripts are not always possible to extract. Then we try to email the authors to ask them, can you please send us your manuscript? So we don't just ignore it. We have actually gone to quite some length in order to get that paper from the author. But there's also the requirement of going into different databases. If you conduct a review in education and you don't go into the most common database for educational papers, that will be a question mark. So try to explore different kinds of databases, 2 or 3 at the minimum, but not one.
Oh, definitely not one.
No.
We'll talk about more though about that shortly.
And then we have, of course, the resources, so time and people. These are sort of the final points. What has been done on this topic before? What research strategy did they use? What population was focused on? Maybe you can use the same kind of approach, but look at the different population. What gaps did they uncover? Maybe you have something to contribute to that gap. How did they structure their results? This can inspire you into how you will structure or not structure your results if you have a critical eye.
Yeah, so this is an example of where we would begin often in our review journey. We would look at all of the evidence syntheses that have been published on our topic before, and we would map it out like you can see here in the appendix. And really think about, okay, what different databases did they look in? As Nina just said, maybe they was focused on a specific population. Maybe there are lots that look at higher education, but they're really only looking at STEM. So maybe I need to think about a different subject area, a different discipline. And then we would use that to help us write our sort of introduction / literature review about what's already known, but this is the reason why my review is necessary because of.
Do you remember one literature review that we conducted when one author actually contacted us and said, hey, why isn't my paper in your background?
No, I don't remember that.
I remember that. So if you are claiming that you have done this literature review, you should also, be pretty certain that main publications have not been missed. But we did include that person.
I'm lucky.
What is the question?
Okay, just to repeat the question for everyone at home and for Nina. The question is, it's not just enough to say that I used my library's access to as many databases as I was allowed to. Is that okay to say? Not really. That's not a good enough excuse not to find as many papers as possible. You need to try and also exhaust things like ResearchGate, which is free technically, or you do have to sign up obviously, but technically, and the question was whether or not we require some kind of statement from authors about that they got things ethically. No, we don't have a statement requirement about that, but we would hope that all of this were acting as ethically as possible.
But what we have done is we have explored how ethics has come across in the different papers that we have reviewed. Like, how did they treat ethical perspectives? Did they ask for informed consent?
That's true.
So, yeah, there are different approaches here to tackle the ethics question. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so what you're asking me really, what if I understand correctly here, so one participant raised the question of, does it matter if I take the paper from a database or from another site? If we just make it brief for the online audience. Yeah, does it matter where you got the paper? What matters here is how you describe it in the method section. If you describe in your method section, for example, I use a snowballing technique, where I went into references in the reference list and then explored further, or if I used other kinds of papers. So how are you describing the method that you used? That is important. So you are allowed to use different approaches, but it should be mentioned in your method section.
But generally, we wouldn't go so far as to say, I got 5 papers from X website,
No.
insert slightly illegal website name here. We wouldn't go so far as to say that. Hopefully, everyone's as ethical as possible. And you find your PDFs in many wonderful, completely legal and ethical places. We'll leave it at that.
I have not seen that we have ever gone anywhere we shouldn't.
No, we'd never.
No.
Well, because what happens with the so the question is, can you use a copy of a manuscript that's been uploaded to an institutional repository, which is a requirement of open access that a lot of our institutions require us to do that. Generally, though, you have to indicate whether or not it was the approved version or whether it was a pre-peer review version. And generally, I know certainly for my institution here, they would generally want a clean accepted version that's going to print, and that's one you upload. So that would be perfectly fine because nothing else will be, yeah.
I will also add something because I don't know if it was you, but someone raised the question of AI earlier and the ethics. So we are seeing a very big shift in the publication landscape with a multitude of new arenas opening up for different kinds of non-academic institutions to write and publish their pieces. And if you conduct a literature review and want to make a scientific publication, you would be expected to include databases that hold scientific publications rather than non-scientific platforms. That is another type of study. You can go into Facebook and look at the interactions, but that would be an empirical study. So that would not be a literature review study.
It was both. It was that we did submit it as Appendix A in our, generally, we tend to, with our personal reviews that we publish, we tend to go over and above and give more data than anyone ever really needs. But that's just part of our view on how transparent one should be when one is publishing this type of work. So do we expect every author to do that? No, not necessarily. But it is an example of good practice. But yeah, I wouldn't turn you away if you submitted something to the Review of Education. You didn't give me a table with all of the reviews that have been published on your topic before, but I would expect you to discuss them in your literature review. It's just, for me, it's easier to do it that way. Helps me think.
I also do this for every study I do, actually.
There you go.
But I don't always, never include it unless it's a literature review. But for me, also when reading up on a topic, if it's an empirical study or whatever I'm doing, I always have this to return to afterwards. So we talked about the structuring of results, and you also need to think of, okay, so how will my review differ from what's already out there? And why should we care? This so what question. And then you think about the money, time, other researchers, software, your skills and aptitude for learning the skills, and the current maturity of the evidence base. What is suitable for this particular topic? And with that, I will hand over to the next.
In terms of getting that, for example, an initial kind of inter-rater reliability between, to say that it's not just your own biases, but you've also got someone else who's screened a portion of your items, and you've come to that kind of consensus. Often, if it's a large review, even if it's your PhD study or if it's a master's review, you need someone else, either a supervisor or a colleague, to be able to help you conduct the review. It's really rare that you would be able to, oh gosh, thanks for putting that camera on. It's really rare that you would be conducting any kind of review like this, a systematic review, by yourself. There are examples. Oh, no, don't pull that face. It's fine. So one of the ones in my PhD I did by myself. We could have a little discussion there about the quality appraisal approach I took, which maybe I would now, in hindsight, do very differently. But you need to put a little bit of thought into, is there like that, someone maybe who's also doing a review, and maybe I could screen a portion of their studies and they could screen a portion of my studies, and we could bounce ideas off each other and
of work that we've shared and signed, like I did this part and you did that part, because that counts as proof of evidence towards your meriting process. Also, when you later become a professor, you need to have these statements. So it's good to select and always carry proof of different kind. So, and some journals, when you submit, also have this requirement that you fill in what parts did you do and what parts did other authors do.
I think if the only thing that your co-reviewer did was to screen 100 studies and then have a little conversation, you could put them in an acknowledgement section. But obviously in the method you would say, this is the process you went through, this was the result.
Per agreement.
Yes.
Per agreement.
Okay, so we're going to switch it up a little bit and talk about which digital evidence synthesis tools are reliable and how can you use them reliably. This was just a slide that I wasn't quite sure where to pop it in there, just as a reminder of, even though perhaps you're doing a different type of review, so even if you're choosing a scoping review or a mapping review, the process is still a systematic process. Apart from, obviously, the quality assessment that we've been talking about, some of the different approaches don't require that step, but everything else is basically the same. It is just as systematic. I like to think of it as a recipe, and that you could give someone the recipe that you did with your ingredients and your method, and they would be able to replicate it. So it's no less systematic. It's just that it's got a slightly different title. So don't be afraid of someone saying, well, I think you should do a scoping review, and then you're not thinking it's good enough or not systematic enough, because it is. Okay, so there are lots of different digital evidence synthesis tools, huge number. Now, this one on the left-hand side was published back in 2021, I think, which tells you that there is so much more out there since this point. It's crazy. But there are lots of tools that are able to help you beyond some of the more static ones like PHOS-Viewer, which are really using networks of information. And, there are things like Elicit and Research Rabbit and Cite. There are, I don't know, I get at least one email every week from a new company saying, oh, you can do your systematic review in like 1 hour or less, depending. There was a research paper recently that was published about doing, was it Cochrane reviews or Campbell reviews with AI, completely with AI, and they compared it. I would stress absolute caution with trusting anything that thinks that it can do a complete systematic synthesis to the highest standard anywhere using just AI. Always, as Nina said, always a human should be in the loop, because there still does exist these biases in the algorithms, and you can't necessarily control what, where, for example, in the PDF, they're taking the information from. Now, when you're extracting data for your review, you know that you need to take the information from the results section of an article, of a study. However, what happens is the AI reads the PDF, it parses it from top to bottom. And even in cases where we've explicitly said, only take the information from the results or findings section, whatever that's called, it is still including information that you've got in your introduction or literature review of that paper. Now, that's not correct. It'll look correct in the output and it will sound plausible, but it's not technically the correct synthesized information that should be in your review.
There is also other things that sometimes when literature reviews are shared with these AI systems, they are so massive, meaning that the AI that goes in and analyzes them flips the argument. So it can say that this author claims this, and it's just the opposite to what that author actually claimed. Not saying always, but saying sometimes. And also, if you're using these tools, what you would think is significant and important is very different to what these tools potentially think is important and what they would emphasize.
No.
I will say that different models, paid tier and free tiers, differ. So difference both between if you're using Copilot or in the latest ChatGPT 5.5, Opus 4.7 might not be. It's having a little bit of problems as it is currently, without going into detail. So it depends on, and it's also depending on how you structure your prompts and how thick the papers are. But if you go into one instance session and you feed different kind of literature reviews, it might start bleeding the literature reviews also together. So I'm not saying that these are not useful. What I'm saying is that if you're using it, open a different chat or a different system and double check that you get the same results, and also skim through the papers to see that these are the actual findings that I would select, because otherwise we're just getting what the AI thinks is that you want, and it's a guessing game.
Okay, the next time someone asks a question, I promise you I will bring the computer to them so that the microphone can pick them up. Sorry, we're getting comments. Okay, I wanted to also mention that there are some fantastic AI tools that can help you locate potential literature, to help you perhaps conduct those initial searches. Something like a connected papers, for example, which will help you locate, do that, some of that snowball searching for you. That kind of tool is fantastic. There are also tools like Atlas, which is a qualitative data analysis software. I know that some of my colleagues, for example, are using this at the minute, and when they're currently doing some inductive coding with it, on items they've included in their review. And the AI functionality there is after they've spent a considerable amount of time doing some human inductive coding and labeling of the data, the AI, there's an option where it will suggest for sections of the text they haven't coded, it'll suggest some categories of their own that look similar to ones that they've already coded. Now that is super useful, but it's not necessarily the AI doing it, but it's, it's another way of it sort of helping, being an adjunct, being an assistant. Now, evidence synthesis software specific platforms include Rayan, Covidence, EPPI-Reviewer. I am completely biased because I work at the Epicenter. EPPI-Reviewer is the evidence synthesis software that we've developed. If you happen to be a UCL student, for example, then that's something, if you're in the IOE at least, that we can hook you up with really, really easily. Everyone can access a 1 month free, etc., online. But there are so many different types of tools. And on this website is a whole range of different evaluations of digital evidence synthesis tools that have been published. So you could also use this website to go and have a look at if you're looking for a tool that helps with deduplication, for example. I mean, you could just use reference management software, but there are other tools available and you could go onto that and find something. I want to just briefly talk a little bit about the work that we do at the Epicenter, the work that I'm heavily involved in on a day-to-day basis at the moment, is that within EPPI-Reviewer, we've got large language models, a whole range of different large language models from different organizations embedded within our platform, our software, which are helping us to create our own bespoke prompts to allow us to do our screening, to allow the humans, to assist the humans in doing their screening and to speed processes up. So for example, if you've ever heard of the Education Endowment Foundation Teaching and Learning Toolkit, they're currently turning, it's basically 32 different strands, 32 different reviews on different types of educational interventions. And they are turning those into living reviews, and they're wanting to use AI to help them speed up the updating process. Now, I'm talking about, they did an update back in 2021, and in one review alone, it identified over 70,000 potential items that would have to be screened based on that specific review topic for the year parameters that they put in there. So what they did was they used a machine learning model, again, within EPPI-Reviewer to try and it learns based on items that are already included in your review. And then it suggests ones that are definitely not going to even come close to what you're looking for. But even using that kind of AI tech only got rid of around 30,000 items. Yeah, okay, that's 30,000 items less. Brilliant. What about the 40,000 that is still remaining to be screened on Tile and Abstract? So we're now starting to roll this out within their toolkit strands, but it's not just a case of, oh, I'm gonna test out one prompt and then do it. It does involve a lot of evaluation, testing, and validation of those prompts in order to make sure that they are reliable, performing correctly before they're deployed anywhere near the actual reviews themselves. But we've been having some really great results, and we've also been working with a lot of other organizations who are moving more towards this idea of living reviews, of having a constantly updated review, which takes an enormous amount of effort and resource. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, we might be able to offer another workshop another time about using AI, using LLMs in particular to assist with screening. Yeah, this is just a little bit more about how it works. I won't go into it now because I'm aware that we've got a schedule, we need to keep going. But this is basically how it works in EPPI-Reviewer, and you can find more information on that website link at the bottom, which you can access through the slides, which are in the Google Drive. Now, some of the meaty stuff. What reporting guidance exists? Very, very important. But almost more importantly is understanding the difference between methodological guidance and reporting guidance. So we had a comment just earlier about wanting to know a little bit more information about PRISMA supported reviews. Now, PRISMA guidelines are the sort of gold standard in terms of reporting. They do, however, come more from the health domain. But there is a big difference between methodological guidance, which takes you through really the nuts and bolts of how to do something, consideration, a bit like we're doing here, giving you advice on how to conduct reviews, as opposed to you need to make sure that you have this, this, and this set out in your article when you're writing up. So I'm not going to go through it, but I've provided a few slides with purely methodological guidance on how you could conduct these reviews. So these are all for scoping reviews, these are all for mapping reviews, and these are all for systematic reviews. So this is methodological guidance that you can, a bit later, take it away, have a look if you want to use it to help you. Because you shouldn't be writing in your method section, this is a PRISMA review. We often get articles that write, or this, I don't know how they write it. This review was done using the PRISMA method. It's not a method. They're reporting guidelines that you do need to cite it, but it's not the method you've used. It's just a checklist that you have used to help you write your article and make sure you've got everything you need to have included in your article. So this is an example of a PRISMA checklist, and these are great because they've got them for all kinds of different review types. They've got them for abstracts, as you can see here, to help you think about the information you should include. But I will caveat this by saying this is heavily health medicine based. So we don't necessarily need to include all of this information in an education abstract, for example, but still useful. They also have them for living reviews, for scoping reviews, and so on and so forth. So these can help you to plot out in your article when you write up what you should include. But it's not a method. This is just another example of what you can find on their website. It is a really wonderful resource, and I highly recommend that you have a look at that. I did also want to bring to your attention, yes, having a PRISMA flowchart in your review is essential. If you don't have one, we will ask you to put one in. So please do it from the beginning. I would also, you can either use the template that they have available on the PRISMA website. I created my own, which I just edit, which probably looks a bit naff now. It's getting a bit old in the tooth. Or you could use this handy app, which is free to use. We've got the link on there, and it will, all you have to do is put in the number of databases, websites, etc. You put in the number that you included, you just put in all the details in, and it will populate this beautiful little template ready for you, and you download it and you pop it in your article. So you don't have to worry about aligning up all the boxes like I did. So that's just a little tip from me. Also, you know, it looks a bit cooler than mine.
And let me ask you something. Yes. Now, can there be calculation mistakes if you use this one?
Oh, can there be calculation mistakes? The only mistakes that can happen are if you've put the wrong numbers in, because you're inputting the numbers.
So when you put the full number and the full number of exclusions, will that add up to the total included number of studies? Because sometimes and quite often, authors change when they exclude numbers and the PRISMA diagram doesn't reflect the actual manuscript. So will it or will it not?
I'm pretty sure it is bound by the numbers you put in. So you need to know your numbers. It's not going to add it up for you. But that still doesn't take away the fact that I think it's cool.
No, I also think it's cool.
All right, so moving on to some more media stuff. So lately I've been doing a lot of meta reviews, like a lot, and these are reviews of reviews. And what this has uncovered for me is the fact that there are so many, and as editors, we see so many reviews that come through across our desk wanting to be published, whose, you know, it's obvious that they've got some idea of what should be included, but maybe not, maybe they haven't actually looked at the PRISMA guidelines of what should be included. We often get people saying they use PRISMA, but not citing it, or citing PRISMA, but then obviously they've never read it in their life. So I designed this tool called the Quality of Evidence Synthesis tool to try and help people as they're doing their reviews, but also to help if you are peer reviewing someone else's review, and also to help us as editors to review the reviews, to peer review the reviews and see whether or not they're reaching a minimum level of quality. So I was meant to put animations on this and I completely forgot. So this tool is, there are actually 11 items. I don't know why there's only 10 on here. There are 11. But these are some of the key things that you need to think about when, not only before you conduct your review, but when you're writing your review up, and also when you're reading someone else's review. Something to think about. It's available already in the Google Drive, but it's also available in Spanish as well, in case that's your native language. One of my colleagues has translated it into Spanish, which is really, really awesome, in the hopes that other journals, Spanish language journals, will take it on board as well to help with their peer reviewing processes. So, number one thing you need to have, make sure that your research questions, aims, or objectives are explicitly and clearly defined, really obvious. You need to make sure also that your inclusion and exclusion criteria are explicitly defined in the paper, including publication use. That's what I did. I combined those two. So it's really important that either in your title, abstract, or method section that you say the exact years that you were searching for your records. You can't just say, I didn't have any time limit restrictions. What does that tell us if we go and read this paper in 5 years' time? We're not going to necessarily know that you only searched from, maybe the database only started in 2000. We don't know. So that's not all the possible research in time.
So let me just ask you, if I decided to write on educational technology between the 2010 and the 2020, would you think that was okay?
I would not think that's okay.
How come?
So the question, well, I hope you heard the question. The question was, if Nina decided to conduct a review from 2010 to 2020, is that okay? And if not, why not? Because especially in a field like educational technology, well, you think about what has happened in the last year alone, let alone in the last, well, from 2010 to 2020. And how useful is that for us now as educators and as researchers with teaching and learning? It's not particularly useful. And also that's been researched to death.
So what's happening is, if we have a literature review dragging on and we know that we will not be able to submit it, we actually do an extended database search and include the publications to be as up to date as humanly possible before we submit.
Yeah. So for example, I've got a review at the moment that we searched up to July last year. And I'm really, and I haven't submitted it yet. It's written, the article is written and ready to go, but I haven't submitted the article yet to my target journal. And I'm already thinking as an editor, oh, July last year, is that recent enough? And at the moment, we're almost in June. That's almost a year. Is that recent enough? I don't know. You could argue. Some people would argue, no, that's not recent enough. You should at least go up to the end of last year. So I've already done the search just in case a peer reviewer comes back and says, oh, it's not recent enough. And then I can quickly, do my coding and whatever, and say, oh, it's fine, it's all good, here you go. But I could also save myself the pain and torture of a peer reviewer or an editor coming back and saying already, when I first submit it, this isn't good enough because it's not recent enough if I actually did it before I submit it. So there's that. Am I going to invest the time now or take a risk that they won't be too picky? That's a really good point. Okay, now Nina mentioned 2 or 3 databases or platforms that you should search in when you're conducting your search. However, I am a picky person, and for me, it should be 4 different databases. Now, other journals probably wouldn't have so high standards, but We're wanting to make sure that if you're conducting a so-called, wide-ranging, majorly encompassing review of your field, of your question, you should be searching widely. And I mean 4 different platforms, not just 4 different databases from the same platform. So not just using EBSCOhost and then ticking, a number of databases, making sure that you're using, for example, Web of Science and Scopus and EBSCOhost with ERIC possibly, and something else, maybe PsycInfo, depending on your questions. Maybe you also want to add to that, you want to use OpenAlex, or you want to use Google Scholar, et cetera, et cetera. So for me personally, I would want you using 4 or more databases. Platforms. I really need to change those platforms. Can I keep going, Tom, or is it really? Okay, the question was, are there tools that help you do forward and backward snowball searching, meaning looking for items that are in the bibliographies of the items that you've identified, but are also cited by other items? The answer is yes. For example, OpenAlex within EPPI-Reviewer enables you, if you have a review in EPPI-Reviewer, you can actually get the machine to match the items in your review to the ones in the OpenAlex database. And then you can set it going to say, I want you to identify anything that's cited these, and you can import them directly into your review. That's just one example for you. Okay, now the next thing, your search string must be reported in full. Please don't give information like, I use keywords such as school, learning, and student. You need to give the exact Boolean string that you used in at least one. I prefer to have one full search string in the manuscript, and then all of the other search strings maybe that have different ways of using their operators as an appendix or uploaded in the OSF. Go your hardest with the copy and the water and the everything, by the way. Again, yes, that is quite, it's quite strict. But for me, I want, it should be, I should be able to copy your search string, paste it into the same database using the same parameters, and I should be getting a very similar number. It's depending on how the database works with the date, etc. I should be getting some kind of similar number to what you got. I should be able to replicate it. You should also be reporting some kind of inter-rater reliability or really in-depth qualitative discussion measures that you have taken between yourself and at least one other person to discuss the potential includes in your review. Often, if you're a PhD or a master's student, that person will often be your supervisor. He'll do that for you, or it might be a colleague. Repeat it.
Yes, this is also what I referred to when I talked about the expert group that Tom in the room asked about. If you don't have everyone on board as co-authors, but you still want to have an integrated reliability of some part of the screening and abstracts.
Yeah. And often, if you have a really large group of reviewers in your team, that can, I'm talking 5 or 6 people in a dream. Well, maybe for some people that's a dream, but for me, that can become a nightmare because you're wanting to reach this a really high level of inter-rater reliability. You want everyone to have a very similar or as much the same understanding about your inclusion-exclusion criteria. It can be really, really tricky and take quite some time to get that agreement. And don't underestimate the time that might take. It does take a bit of time. Sorry, I wanted to mention with the inclusion-exclusion criteria as well, they are not mutually exclusive. It's not okay to just have like English language on the include, English language, not English language. Published after 2010, published before 2010. It shouldn't be the diametric opposite because you might have a very specific exclusion criteria. You might be looking at school students, but you're not looking at high school students. Or, there might be a population or a specific kind of study design that you want to include or exclude, and you need to be really specific about that. You need to give as well thorough information about your use of any digital evidence synthesis tool. And for us, we would really prefer you to say, like I use this tool for deduplication, Then I use this tool for screening, and this is how I did it. Then I use this tool for data extraction, and this is how I did it, etc., etc. For us, they should be named, and especially now that we're getting more into this AI kind of supported evidence synthesis, you need to be really explicit about how you use what tool, and especially if AI was involved, how it was involved. You should also provide a full data extraction coding scheme. Now, this can either be done as a printout of your coding tool. So, for example, it just has a list of the codes that people would, you would be using and maybe their descriptions, or maybe you would provide a spreadsheet with the codes and then with all the coding. That's another way that you can do it. But you would, I would expect that that would be attached as an appendix or uploaded to the OSF or some other online repository. If you are doing a systematic review, for example, or a meta-analysis, you need to explicitly define the quality criteria that were extracted for each study. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about those shortly, what kind of tools do exist. But if you are using one, then you need to provide the list of what those questions were, and then also what the results were of the quality assessment that you did. Sufficient information is presented about individual papers. Again, that's a bit like the tables that Nina showed you earlier with the study details and the findings, the results. Yeah. And as well, that you have included in your article a specific and identifiable limitations section, not just reflecting on the limitations of the research of the studies that you've included in your review, but reflecting on the limitations of your own review approach that you took. So did you only include English language studies? That is a bias. You need to acknowledge it, and you need to explain, well, maybe in the future I could do this to minimize that bias. I only searched in 3 platforms when Mel said I should search in 4. That's a limitation. I mean, don't write like that, but now, according to the PRISMA guidelines, the limitation section should be just before your conclusion. However, another editor once told me that why would you put your limitations right before the conclusion? Like, that's kind of leaving people with a sour taste in their mouth. So for a lot of my reviews, I actually put the limitation section at the end of the method section, because it was, in that respect, it was really reflecting on the methodological limitations of my approach. So personally, I would accept either placement, but it's got to be in there, and it's got to have a subtitle that says limitations. This is what it looks like, the Quest tool. And this is what I get. So let's say you've submitted your article to Review of Education, and I've been assigned as your handling editor. I will get up a tool like this, or actually mine is a bit more abridged because I don't need all of the interpretation part. And I will read through, especially pay attention to your method section. And I will look and I will go through each of the criteria and assign you a yes, a partly, or a no. And you can see there in the interpretation what each of them mean. Now, for this particular tool, I've assigned a score of 1 for yes, 0.5 for partly, and no is a 0. There are some cases where, for example, this one, the quality assessment, we know a scoping review, mapping review, literature review doesn't need a quality assessment, so that would just be automatically given a 1. It's not a perfect system, and I'm not about to argue with the quantity people about the difference, like the range between 0 and 1. I don't want to start a thing. But for now, this is working. And so at the moment, there are 11 criteria, and I would add those up, and they are, assigned to a different level of quality. Critically low, low, medium, high, and excellent. Now, at the moment, if you're not able to score at least a medium level with this manuscript that's come to me, I will return it to you and say, I'm sorry, it's not ready for peer review, and I'll help you identify. Generally, I will send this to you, and it will highlight what I found and give you suggestions on where you could improve. But it would be awesome if people did that themselves first, did a little self-assessment with the tool, had a look, made sure, I mean, I'd love if you did that if it was like more high excellent, but at least if it's medium, then, you know, that will save you time in your peer review journey for your article, because then you know that it's going to get to the peer reviewers soon. That's going to pass on to the peer review stage much quicker. It won't get as desk rejected because of methodological reasons. Now, just to quickly show you how I've applied this in my research. So I've used my tool in a number of different reviews now, meta reviews. So I've been appraising other reviews. So this one was on AI applications in higher education in the meta review. And I appraised these studies that have been published in the field of AI in higher education. Now, you might look at this and think, well, actually, you know, at least 33 were medium quality. And these are all published, by the way. These are all published reviews. So we can see that there are 10 of these that got published, but they actually scored low or critically low just using these 11 items about their method section. But even looking at that, you think, oh, 17 high, 6 excellent, pretty good. But when you look at the things that they didn't include, the numbers are quite stark. We see that only half of them included searched in at least the right number of databases and platforms. We see in particular, not a lot of people including information about the inter-rater reliability, about their data extraction coding scheme, of the systematic reviews that absolutely should have done a quality appraisal. Only 18.2% of them did one and reported it. And these all got published. So that for us, it's just not good enough. Very few, still only 40% of reviews reported their limitations completely with their subsection, a little subheading, and then reflected on the limitations. So then I've also, because I'm a nerd, I like to compare nerdy things. And this is looking at a whole range of different reviews that have used my quality appraisal tool in them. And you can see this isn't just a problem in AI in higher education area. It's a problem in EdTech in general, in online digital and distance education, programming and robotics. The International Journal of Educational Technology and Higher Education, which is the top ranked SSCI journal in educational research, and widening participation, which is a completely different type of topic, still has quite low numbers. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you through how to use the Quest tool with the article that last year. So last year, what we did was some of the BERA journals have a editor's choice article of the year award. And last year, we all of the editors thought about all of the articles that were published in 2025, and we nominated several for us to vote from, and then we voted amongst ourselves. And this was the editorial board then voted, I beg your pardon. And this was the article that got the most votes, which is Towards Reproducible Systematic Reviews in Open Distance and Digital Education, an Umbrella Mapping Review. So actually not quite a useful topic as well for us to think a bit more about rigor and quality of evidence syntheses. And I have to apologize to everyone at home because for some reason the in-room camera is no longer working. So I don't know why that is, but it's not. No, yours is fine, Nina. It's the room camera. Oh, that's weird. That's not it. It's the in-room camera. Oh, well, you'll just have to not look at me in the room, but at least you can see me on Nina's camera. So that's something. So we're going to have a look at this particular article. It is actually in your, it is open access, so you could access it through the website link, but it's also available in the Google Drive folder. And we're going to use Quest to have a look at the quality of this particular article. Oh, again with the thing. The clicker only works if you've got the PowerPoint slides selected. Okay, so the very first criteria of the Quest tool is, are there clear research questions, aims, or objectives? Here's a screenshot of the publication. And here is the section where they have their research questions, aims, or objectives. What do we think? Yes, partly or no? Yes, that's what I would say as well. All right. Do you think there's full inclusion and exclusion criteria provided here in their method section? So this is their method section here, their inclusion exclusion criteria, and here are the quality criteria. To get a yes, they both have to be there. To get a partly implicit or only one of them is mentioned, no, is they're not defined. Let me put it another way. Put your hand up in the room, and online I see thumbs already. If it's a yes, do it now. If it's a partly, do it now. Okay, that's very interesting. From the people who said partly, what is it about this inclusion exclusion criteria that you would say isn't fully complete? Now, I actually said yes, but I can see your argument. I guess the reason I said yes was because, I mean, with languages, you're not going to want to write out all the languages in the world. And here, they did say informal and non-formal education not included. So at least they said that. And then they also said explicitly what not, if they only had not journal articles, that's not enough. But the fact they also said books, editorials, notes, I guess.
Education is a reasonably geographical transferable term, but K-12 isn't.
That's a good point.
Would the expectation be that that's brought here or in their search strings? Or
The expectation would be that in their method section, they would probably need to narratively explain what their inclusion criteria is. And so I would expect them there to go into more detail, and definitely in the search string to reflect the different terms, so that you would have school, or primary school, high school, secondary school,
yeah.
all of that in the search string.
So within this table, say K-12 would maybe be enough in the kind of at least that range, and then the search string would have to be more.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I can understand why they've gone into less detail here using abbreviations and stuff, acronyms. But I know that they've gone into more detail in the actual text, and they definitely did in the search string. Okay, next one. Are the publication years included defined in the title, abstract, or method section? What do you think? Yes, there they are. 2018 to 2022. You could, even if you wanted to be even more specific and say, oh, it's January to December, or in my case, like with that review I haven't submitted, to July. I'd have to say that explicitly, to the end of July. Was it the 15th of July? Need to be that specific. Next one. Was the search adequately conducted and likely to have covered all relevant studies? Have a quick look, see? And see what you think. I should really be using the polling feature for you guys online. I didn't think of that ahead of time, and so I'm not prepared for that, but that would have been cool for them to select yes, no, yes, partly, no. Anyway, that's a thought for another time. Okay, in particular, oh, we got a thumbs down. I'm going to guess that's a no or a partly. People in the room, partly. Are you saying partly? 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 Correct. Yeah, partly. The reason is there's only 3 platforms here: Education Source, Scopus, and Web of Science. Still though, 3 very good ones. And I think they also, I probably didn't capture it here very well, but I think they did also do a little bit of snowball searching on the side. So that would definitely be partly. Okay, was the search string reported in full? Is this a fully replicable Boolean search string? Yes, partly, no. Yes, give a thumbs up. Partly give well, online, I guess you could give a thumbs down for partly as well as no. In the room? Partly? Not sure. Ah, okay. Now, this is technically, in a way, fully replicable. If you know what you're doing with a search string that looks like this, it is. But where it looks a little bit, I guess, a little bit scary or a little bit confusing is because they're using the within 3 words, within 2 words operators, and in different platforms and databases, they're actually, that would be used in a different way. So in some platforms, it would be the word near and then the number. Whereas this is using a W. So my advice is always provide a search string that's like kind of platform agnostic. It doesn't matter which platform you use it, or you provide one in the text like this, and then in your appendix you provide all the other potential search strings that you've used and say exactly which database it was and what operators you used. Right. Do they report their inter-rater reliability? So a total of 60 articles across 3 runs of 20 were blindly screened, coded, compared, and reconciled. And they achieved a coding consistency of kappa value of 0.77 using FLICE kappa, which is for 3 or more coders using FLICE. Yes, 100%. That's pretty good. We would also be really okay with a more qualitative approach where perhaps you weren't able to calculate a kappa value, but you conducted rounds of really in-depth discussion, and you came to an agreement. But it would need to be Gesundheit. It would need to be really detailed explanation of how you did that without a kappa value. Right. Next one, did they talk about the digital evidence synthesis tools, use or explicit non-use? You might be someone who loves paper and pen. You might want to do your review in a spreadsheet, and that's fine. But you need to say that you've explicitly, if you don't use a digital evidence synthesis tool, you need to explicitly say that you have not used one. So this one's a little harder to see. I apologize because there's a lot more information. But here you can see that they used a Python code to identify and remove studies. So they used the Python code to deduplicate in a way, or to identify ones that weren't systematic reviews by looking for the word systematic. That's quite clever. Then they used Rayan to do their screening. Then they used SPSS to do some more screening and coding. And then they used tidyverse packages for data analysis and statistics with R. So yeah, I think we could probably give them a yes. I see already some thumbs up. Whoop, I went too quick. Absolutely, that's good enough for me. But preferably each stage. Did you, like searching, you might have used an AI tool to locate some articles, deduplication between all the different databases, the screening, and then your extraction and your analysis. Right, did they provide a data extraction coding scheme? I got 1 thumb up in the room. Yes, more thumbs up. Absolutely. Yep, they put it in the appendix. They gave the scope. A lot of them are just yeses or nos. Again, this could also have been like a spreadsheet with all their raw data with just their full coding information, and that would have been great too. Next one, is some form of quality assessment applied? So this is a type of meta-systematic review, really. It's an umbrella review. So it does need to do a systematic appraisal, quality appraisal. Yes, absolutely. Got a thumbs up there. They've explicitly defined it. And they also gave the results of some of the studies. Now, I'm not 100% sure in their, I mean, we're really like splitting hairs, but in their OSF project, I'm not sure they gave the quality results for every single review, but they definitely did it for like the ones that scored really well. So, are sufficient details provided about the individual included studies? This is the only real bit that I could find. I may have just answered that for you. This is what I could find. So thumb up for yes, thumb down for no, or partly. Now, it's a shame I don't have like a middle range for partly, really, especially for the online people, because this was literally the only thing I could find that was talking about the studies that included and gave a little bit more information about them. So yeah, I would probably, here I was nice. On this particular slide, I was nice, but I would almost err in no in this, almost, I don't know, because there wasn't a lot of information. Normally I'd want a lot more, like the examples we provided earlier. All right. Is there an explicit reflection on the review limitations? Yes, there is, because there's got a limitation section with a beautiful subheading. And that brings us to the score. Now, I was obviously in a very, very nice mood when I did this slide and when I was doing the quality. I mean, I have done it before where I didn't get the same score because I was in a slightly like more pickier mood. But anyway, using this, I gave it a 10 out of 11. My question to you is, using Menti, do you agree with the quality score? Do you agree that this is excellent and worth a 10 out of 11? Or do you think it should have been high quality? So in the, what is it, the 9 to 10 range? Or should it be medium quality? Or you're on the fence? You're not really sure either way. Oh, I've hidden the responses. Let's see. Whoops, nope, that's not it. Show me responses. Where's my doodad? Here we go. All right, it should be coming soon. It should be, yes, there we go. All right. Ooh, very interesting. So someone thinks it should be medium quality, didn't even rate it high quality. We should have a chat, whoever you were. We should talk. You're probably the kind of person I'd love to have a chat to. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. To be honest, it's a bit tricky with some of them because I do have really high expectations. And so perhaps they were a little bit high in this case. But at least you know that around about where it should be. All right. So what we're going to be doing now is we are going to be putting you into the people online, you're going to be put into breakout rooms. And the people here in the room will be working with me. And Nina's also going to a breakout room, or are you not? Amy's arrived. Awesome. I'll make Amy a co-host as well. So people online, you're going to be going into a breakout room to have a look at this article, which is in the Google Drive, or you can find it online. And you are going to use the Quest tool to appraise this using the same process. Appraise. Now, this is a shortlisted, highly commended in the Review of Education Editors Awards. You know, we're trying not to pick on anyone, but we just thought we'll pick some ones that you know, yeah. So what we want you to do is give them an overall score and a quality rating. Think about, is there anything they really excelled at, something that they really did really well, transparent, replicable? Is there anything that could have been improved? And if so, what was it? So I'm going to pop you into your breakout rooms now. I know that some groups didn't get very far in terms of going through all of the items, and that's absolutely fine. The main thing is that you started that discussion around quality and rigor and things that you need to think about. Perhaps I was wondering if one of the online groups maybe wanted to say something about something the paper actually did quite well. It could just be one thing that their group said, oh yeah, they did this thing really well.
Yeah, I can go first. So we only finished 6 items. 2 items that we kind of coded as yes are the research questions, very clear, right before the method section. So well done. And then the search strings, in their case, also fully reported, and they also have an appendix kind of listed out the kind of pilot results of those search strings. Whether they were separate or combined. So 2 areas, I think they did very well.
Very cool. Amy, did you have any others that you wanted to mention? No?
Yeah, I would like to say something.
Oh, sure, go.
Hello. Yeah, I think the paper clearly shows novelty because it's very, very relevant. When a student goes for PhD course, unless and until it is completely personal, everybody aims to secure a position in a college or university. And the present status, I'm from India, and I know that there is a research gap. The universities don't prepare the PhD students to become university lecturers or professors. So from novelty point of view, this research paper goes 90. Thank you.
Yeah, Absolutely. I 100% agree, which is why I thought this was a great one to share with everyone. All right. In that case, Terry, is there something in your group that was mentioned in terms of reporting that perhaps the authors could have improved upon or could have included?
Yes, I think we have had very similar responses as Xinwang's group for the ones that were reported well. And in terms of what could be done better, we were thinking about the inclusion and exclusion criteria. That we didn't at least find a very explicit and extensive list of those things. Also, we were wondering about the publication years, whether those were like actually limited in the search, or whether they were not limited, but they just then reported from which years those publications were from that were in their review. Let me see. Yes. And then we also thought that the search procedure was like, we would say that it was like partly, we rated it as partly in the quest of having 3 platforms that they searched in their literature search.
Yeah.
That's where we didn't get any further than that, but that's what we found.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you. And I have to apologize to everyone because we had intended to spend a good like up to an hour on this activity and another activity, but we've got so much information that we wanted to share with you that Nina and I in particular, probably more me, talked a bit too much at the beginning in the first half of the workshop. So I do apologize.
But it still gives a good idea of how to do this when we look at least a couple of questions. So I think it was still great. Yeah.
Absolutely.
For my group, Dinja took notes.
Ooh.
He will be talking.
In that case, could you invite them to say something?
Please, Dinja from the group I was in, can you share our discussions, please? Donja. Yes.
Thank you, Nina. We had a very insightful discussion, and we, like Xinwang's group, we had exactly the same decisions regarding the items that they did well. And then for the interreliability one, we didn't find any specific percentage regarding this one, but they did mention something about creating the coding scheme. We didn't believe it's quite sufficient for this kind of review. And one group member mentioned that what if they're like doing a systematic review or scoping review on their own without a second reviewer? So what do they do in this kind of situation? We were saying that normally we would encourage having multiple people in the review, but if there is no way to find another one, we might also report some inter-rater reliabilities, like one people doing the review multiple times and then report this score. And also we discussed the years as well. We only find the publication years mentioned in diagram 4, and it's up to 2022. But according to the search date, it says January 2024. So we were wondering what happened in the latest 2 years, whether there is no publication at all or whether there is a mistake in this diagram.
Wow, good catch. Excellent. Thank you so much. You're right. That was a wonderfully, wow, a really great discussion that you all had. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. Now, I know that we want to leave a bit of time at the end. Like, I can't believe we've only got 20 minutes basically to go. So I know that we want to have a bit of time for question and answers, but we were just thinking it might be nice for you to reflect upon how you might use let's get over that one. How you might use the quest in your own capacity, in your role, for your reviews. You know, can you see it being used in some other way? How could it be improved? And if you would improve it, what would you do to improve it? So using Menti, and there is the joining information there still on the screen. How could you use the quest in your role? Just spend a few minutes getting some feedback. That's interesting. Voting in progress. What's it coming up with when you log into it? Oh, maybe it's because I'm not sharing it anymore. Hang on. Let's go back to this. All right. How's that? I apologize. Normally, I would import my slides into Mentimeter and then run everything through that. But because, anyway, I did it a different way. And that's why I'm constantly having to shuffle.
What I like particularly, Melissa, when we presented ourselves, is that the editorial team is distributed all over our world, like from the UK to the US to Australia to even the Scandinavian region.
Yeah,
That is nice.
that is nice. Thanks for that.
Yeah, that was something I reflected upon when people introduced themselves. And I think of Anne-Marie, who is now journeying to go to bed.
Yes, I bet if she hasn't already logged off. I hope you're hanging in there, Anne-Marie. Well, there she is.
Yeah, still here, still listening.
Oh, good on you. You're doing really well. Now, all right. Well, maybe what we'll do is I will send something through in the coming days with some questions about the quest and maybe some feedback about it. Because yeah, the Mentimeter is not necessarily playing happy families with me at the minute. Just so that you can reflect upon using it, but mostly think about how it could be improved. Is it user-friendly? Is it not user-friendly? Because really, you know, us at the in the editorial board, in the editorial team, we're using it to triage. You know, our articles get submitted to us, and then we're using it to use to think about, you know, is this of at least medium quality? If not, you know, so we want to really make sure that it's user-friendly and that other people can use it as well. Tom.
Factors do you tend to go? So as an example, the search string, the current form just has a, is it there? Is it kind of there? Is it not? But the first paper we looked at, we had the kind of K-12 discussion.
Right.
Their search string, whenever, or the bit of the search string you put up, said nothing about the schools.
Right.
But if I was using this very prescriptively, they would still get a yes because they stated them.
Correct.
Whether or not they are sufficient for the criteria listed. Or is that something you would leave to the peer, like the reviewer?
Correct.
Cool.
Yeah. So the answer is we're not looking at necessarily the quality of the search string. We're looking on, has it been reported? Yeah. Does it exist? And if I went a step further, I would like to say in the descriptor, is it in the article? Is one in the article and the rest of them in an appendix or on the OSF or something?
So then, say you as the editor, do you actively ignore whether that search string is good enough or not in order to pass this? Essentially, is that something you consciously or unconsciously account for? In which case it could be helpful to be in this if I'm using it to assess my own.
That's a really good point.
Because if it's something you turn around and go, it meets this, not a great search string, but the reviewer will catch it, then that's one thing. But if you're likely to, let's say, bounce it in the politest way possible, because that's you've with your hat went, that's not going to be good enough, then it would be helpful to have in this as like the author's checklist. If it's something you're going to bounce consciously or unconsciously.
Well, my honest answer is that when I'm looking at it, I'm doing using the quest, but I am also thinking, is this search string likely to answer their questions? Yes or no? Yeah. What if I put it, and sometimes I do, I will copy and paste it and pop it into Web of Science or whatever, just to see what shakes. And I have actually rejected based on the fact that there is no possible way that this search string got this many results or didn't get or got this little results.
Yeah.
And so that might not be answered in the quest, but it would be right. I see what you're saying. Is that going to take it too far though then?
I suppose it kind of depends on what you're looking for, because my big one for that first paper is there was nothing in Orbit what you showed us that would tell me that their search string embedded their inclusion exclusion criteria, because schools weren't mentioned, and that was one of their inclusion was higher education in K-12, and that wasn't in the string they showed. At which point I would probably end up with the almost search string doesn't match criteria, which would be a reasonable thing for the check, I suppose.
I love the food for thought. Very thorough, Tom. Very thorough. Okay. I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to open it up to the floor for those people online who are still with us. Thank you for sticking it out. 3 hours is a very long time. And for those people in the room, and I will, I'll try either myself or Nina can answer, or perhaps if we don't want to, we'll throw it to one of you guys, the editorial board, editorial team members as well. Okay, so we'll start with hands up. If you're online, please type your questions in the chat. Here's the first question from in person.
So if you use the connected papers, you suggested as a AI search tool for snowballing, would you report that in your PRISMA tool?
Yes.
You would write exactly that it came from this AI tool?
Yes.
And what if it comes up with article from other sources? For instance, like Register Archive. You can locate the source. Would you report that instead, or the AI tool?
Well, this is tricky to answer because I haven't actually used it in a live review. I've just used it for funsies, just to scope something out at the beginning. I guess I would just say that I located, if it was from within, just within connected papers, I would say X number came from connected papers. And then when it was deduped, it might have been found in other places. You would report how many were duplicates. If, however, you saw something that then sent you somewhere else, and then you actually got the paper from there, technically you should report that you also got it from there.
Yeah.
Tricky though. That's a tricky question.
Yeah, I've used it recently to quality check my search.
Oh, nice.
My tools in the end to see the results and then upload and see if they become duplicates in my search, or if they added new studies. And then I go back to the source and see where they came from.
Oh, very cool. Okay, now we have something I can't quite see, but there is something, maybe someone has, in the Q&A. Okay, there is a question here. Has anyone used Campbell's systematic reviews to register their title and protocol? Would you recommend using it? I'm not sure how long the peer review process usually takes. Would really appreciate your advice. Now, does any of the online editorial team want to answer that? I can answer that if you can't. No one's rushing in, so I'll answer that. So Campbell's systematic reviews, I haven't, simply because it does take a long time and I wouldn't recommend doing it. However, you could use, and if I flash forward with my beautiful slides here, you could register your title and protocol on a website like the International Database of Education Systematic Reviews. You could register it there. You could also register it just simply on the OSF, and that would be enough for reviews. And there are a couple of other places you could do that, but those would be what I would suggest doing. OSF can also have an anonymous link so that when it's being peer reviewed, they can't see. That's very good. Thank you, Nina. Now, question was around reflexivity, positionality, where you would place that in either, whether it's an article or a thesis when it comes to systematic reviews. I'm going to get Nina to answer it because she heard it and because she's got a position on that.
Okay. All right.
So first, there is great degree of freedom when it comes to this. But in some research fields, there are certain traditions, more in the qualitative narrative field, that you include it in your actual paper, because it's so qualitative that when you go through the cycle of analysis, it builds on who you are, your previous knowledge, and who you become as you code and analyze the data. So it's really looking at the subjectivity of the researcher as a person. And then we have a more quantitative or positive tradition where we think of data as objective, and that there's interoperability, that's the only thing that matters. And these positions can stand in contrast to each other a little bit. So if some things are purely quantitative and that is a journal where you're publishing that has that tradition, there might not be a requirement at all for any positionality when it comes to your authorship or how you are as a person. So it depends on where you want to publish, what kind of tradition that you are writing yourself into. And if you are thinking about your thesis, then are you also a qualitatively, are you talking to the qualitative researcher community, or are you in a quanti field which have less of philosophical positioning, less of those kinds? So,
like, I understand that, I'm just sort of all coming at it perhaps like asking for a bit more like reflection around positionality in general and systematic reviews, like in terms of like,
It doesn't happen a lot.
no, exactly, even though
it mostly happens in the qualitative narrative reviews.
Especially like a meta ethnography, it would happen. I mean, we've got one that we're just submitting where the one with Helen,
Yes.
where she asked for us, and we didn't have anything about our positionality in there.
And that was then a separate paper. So some publication streams, they also prefer to have author positionality separate from the research paper itself. Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
So sometimes you can see it in the end of a publication, and sometimes it's interwoven under the methodological section. Sometimes it's in this thesis, it looks a little bit different because then you have the kappa section where you can elaborate. Okay.
Thank you, lovely. Okay, we've got 2 other questions that are here online, so I'll do them, and then if there's any other questions in the room, I'll go to you. So the first question is, when should you stop searching for items because there is a large pool of papers? Does it completely depend on us, or is there any criteria to make decisions about it? I think that's 2 questions, because one is about if you find a lot of stuff, should you not search in that 4th database or that 4th platform or that 5th platform? That's one thing. So my answer for that would be, and Sinwang, if you wanted to answer that, please do feel free to answer that question. No, I'm throwing you under the bus there. I just saw your face and thought, yes, let's ask you. No. Okay. You shouldn't stop searching just because it's a scary number, I'm afraid to say. I'm really sorry. The other question is, what if you are screening, and even this is a debate that happens a lot with AI tools. You know, you've got what's called stopping criteria. Say, for example, you're using something called priority screening, and what it does is present to you the items that are more likely to be included first. And at what point should you stop screening those? Personally, I never stop early. However, some people would say that there is an argument to say, you know, it should be at a certain point, statistically speaking, but I wouldn't stop early. The second online question I wanted to answer was, if an article is excluded at the data extraction stage, this is a great question, which can happen occasionally, and it happens more than occasionally, it happens a lot. Should it be included in the PRISMA diagram, or would it be better to explain this separately in the data extraction section and then say the final number of studies included? Sinwang, I am going to pick on you and ask you to please answer that question, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah. I would just include it as part of the diagram, but with a separate reason. Yeah.
Yep, that was succinct. Thank you. Yeah. Amy, would you say anything else?
Yeah, I probably would include in the diagram, but in the text you would refer to it and explain a little bit more about the reasons why you exclude them.
Awesome. Yeah, you got another question? Hang on, I've got to get closer to you just so that they can have a hope of hearing you.
Could you talk a bit about your review compared to other similar reviews, specifically review of educational research or educational research review?
Oh, you're wanting us to compare Review of Education journal to the top ranked other education review journals. Sinwang, you can take that one. How do we
Sure.
compare? How are we
Yeah.
different? How are we different to, yeah, the other ones? Review of Education.
What's the question? Because I couldn't hear
Okay.
it.
I'll say it, try to say more succinctly. How does the Review of Education differ from journals like Educational Research Review, Review of Educational Research, and because you know there's some top journals there. What's our point of difference, please?
So I think first of all they are much more well established than ours. We were relatively new, and obviously we don't just publish syntheses, as I introduced at the beginning of the session. So we do publish primary studies and a mixture of both occasionally. So the names are very similar. By no way we're only publishing syntheses, and I think because we are such a younger journal, I think we embrace, as Mel illustrated, we embrace both the kind of methodological rigor and also the kind of innovative practices of synthesis methodology as well. So there is, I would say, a much more kind of broad spectrum of studies and reviews that we take into consideration. And I think if you look at the editorial board, for example, as Nina suggested, that we're based in different parts of the world. And I would say, for example, like Journal Review of Educational Research, which is primarily US focused, even though they're an international journal. We do have board members from virtually different parts of the world, different continents. So I think it's that kind of perspectives that bring into the journal. And I would say personally, I mean, I've reviewed for all the other journals that I think I've heard the audience suggested. I think from my experience, kind of reading other reviewers' comments, I think I'm quite pleased with the quality of comments that we have received for our papers. That they are usually quite useful and usually quite extensive, at least those that I've reviewed. So yeah. We're similar, but not entirely the same as those other journals. Yeah.
I'd say we're an up and comer. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, now there's one more question, which was, is there any software that can be employed during the title and abstract screening stage? Definitely. That's when we're talking about things like Rayan, Covidence, EPPI-Reviewer. Those I would definitely recommend. You can also, I mean, you could just use a spreadsheet and say include, exclude, but that makes me shrivel up inside. So yeah, those would be the ones I would suggest. But we could always do another session perhaps on more focused on the tools that you can use in software. They're dropping like flies in here because it is 4 o'clock. So any other questions? Yes, Tom has another question. And if you're online, you want to drop off, you can. This is being recorded and you can catch up later.
The question specifically requires more than one set of inclusion and exclusion criteria.
I think it's not necessarily that you need to have different sets of inclusion exclusion criteria, but that you might need to.
There will be a particular question.
Okay. You might need to follow up with us.
Cool.
I think.
Yep.
If that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah. think that requires a bit more of a thorough answer. Any other questions with my roaming microphone?
I have it's a broad question though. Just in general, we haven't spoken much about grey literature and the inclusion of grey literature in your review. Just if there's any way in which you can provide either source of information, or like how does that also speak back to the evidence, like to the tools, because it will not be captured in the same way if you're like doing review around grey literature as well. And how normally, and then a question for that as well, with the quality of the grey literature. Do you then set a standard of like, okay, I search these external grey literature databases? Would that be a similar like 3 to 4 databases?
Oh, okay. I'll be honest, I've not thought about grey literature databases, and should that I wouldn't include them in that like 3 or 4 platforms. I wouldn't actually include them.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
So when we talk about grey literature, white papers, reports, and so on, these go typically into the rapid reviews or mapping, when you're doing a scoping review where little has been published before, and then you have to extend into these other sources. Typically, they are not found in databases. No one has gathered them, but they are at different governmental sites, organization, UNESCO, or we can have OECD or other types of organizations, depending on what you're actually exploring, your topic of interest or subject. So that means that you wouldn't go and dedicate every website that you have been on to extract this. You just mentioned that grey literature or white papers or reports were also included and amount to, and then you give the total number of that. Because in your appendix, you are listing the resources anyway, and then it will be evident if they are from OECD or where they are from, government sources.
Okay. There are other things I would like to say in response to that, but I think we better let these online people go. So unless anyone else has anything to say online, we would like to say thank you so much for being with us here today. And we hope that you have learned something, and that you've been inspired in some way, hopefully, or perhaps it's just given you more questions than answers, in which case, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. You can contact us via our emails, but I will follow up afterwards with link to the recording and our other materials. And yeah, we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Nina. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.